ready. And so are the Canadian women, led by Kelowna's Joanne Ritchie. She won the world title 2 years ago. Back to defend her crown is Michellie Jones, undefeated in races she's finished in '93. Talk about a confidence builder.
Confidence? I don't think you can be confident coming into a world championship. It's the type of race where the unexpected happens. You know, it doesn't matter what your past performance has been, you know, anything can happen. There's so many strong contenders out there that it is going to be a tough race, and you do have to be 100%.
And speaking of 100%, defending men's champion Simon Lessing has been racing well, but he must now deal with home country pressure.
I feel confident with the way I am racing, but also I realize that triathlon is a sport that 1 week you can be racing really, really well, and 1 week you can have a bad week. And it doesn't necessarily... I prefer to look at my whole season and say, right, I've had a good season, as opposed to looking at one race. Of course, I'd like to win, but I don't feel personally within me that there's a lot of pressure.
Calm on the outside, but what's Simon like inside? Last-minute bike checks for Canadian veterans Terry Smith and Joanne Ritchie. Ritchie just coming off a second-place finish at the Canadians in Calgary.
Actually, I'm feeling quite good. I just know where I'm at. I'm starting to really look forward to the race, which is always a good sign for me. I'm excited about competing rather than after.
Rick Wells of New Zealand drops over for a chat with Ritchie as the preparations continue for Heather Fuhr, Fiona Cribb, and Mark Bates. In years past, one of the more consistent Canadian performers and runner-up to Frank Clark in Calgary.
As far as consistency goes, I've just tried really hard every year to make the national team. That's been my primary goal, and go on to the World Championships. And I think it's a real honor to represent Canada at the Worlds, and something I make an effort to do every year.
And you know the effort will be there this year in Manchester. Also expect a strong effort from this Canadian, now living in San Diego, Carol Montgomery, who bypassed Muskoka last year, but was second at the Worlds in Florida 3 years ago. Andrew McMartin of Montreal is just coming off a 90-day ITU suspension for illegal use of Sudafed. But will he be race fit?
To me, just being here, I've already won. I can't really, I'm just going to get out there and put all my training to the test.
The test is just moments away for Andrew McMartin. First into the 12-degree reservoir water to start the 1.5K swim will be the junior men. Leading the Canadian juniors, 19-year-old Stefan Jacobson from Sydney, BC. A very impressive 9th overall of the Canadians in Calgary. And there's KIRSTIE OTTO, the current Canadian junior champion.
I'm hoping more for next year than this year. I'd like to be in the medal again. Of course, I will be disappointed if I don't medal this year. But top 5, I think, would be reasonable for me.
Reasonable, certainly. A medal, a definite possibility for KIRSTIE. Now, the start for the junior men. The running start into the water where mere survival is sometimes considered the #1 priority. Back on the shore, the junior women await their turn. Remember, it's from the junior ranks that potential elite champions will emerge. All swimmers will wear wetsuits, the water temperature demanding that. For the weaker swimmers, the added buoyancy is a bit of a plus. KIRSTIE OTTO is considered a good swimmer. Now, we're set for the junior women's start. Behind the official on shore, Miles Stewart, world champion 2 years ago. Defending his title in Manchester, Simon Lessing.
It's probably 19 degrees now.
The last buoy there. We don't have to go around, it's just a marker buoy. Straight in.
Making the jump from world junior champion to elite, England's Spencer Smith. And there's Greg Welch, who led the Aussie charge 3 years ago in Orlando. How about the water conditions in Manchester?
If anything, I think that the water could be a little bit warmer, and not so many people in the start together.
Congestion at the start, a problem for everyone, but the good triathletes always seem to find a way of getting to the front very quickly into the swim. Now, this will give you an idea of the swim area in relationship to the 2 major cities involved, Bolton and Manchester. The swim begins with 800 meters to the first marker, a left turn 100 meters to the next marker, and then 600 meters back to the shore. Now, the start.
And they're away, 129 men competing in the elite men's category today. Some of the men we've got to watch for. Last year's second placer out of the water from South Africa, Kevin Richards, and the man who led last year through the swim, Richard Wells of New Zealand. He'll be doing well, we hope, but he's not in that great a shape, he tells me. Others to look for, Garrett McCarthy, the man who led through the bike last year in the World Championships. From France, we have Yves Cordier, but the Brits are looking towards their Olympic team captain from 1984 for swimming. That's Robin Brew, a man who loves to lead them through. And of course, this is a very prestigious race for the Brits. They did very well last year at the World Championships. And we cannot forget two other very fine swimmers from Great Britain in Simon Lessing, the reigning world champion, and Spencer Smith, the world junior men's champion.
And of course, the trick in the swim is to do as well as you can, but not to expend too much energy, because you have to have something left for the bike and run.
Indeed, but it's quite a comfortable course, 800 metres straight out. And as we look at our leaders, I think that is Robin Brew and Kevin Richards. They've gone straight to the lead. Not surprisingly, there with Robin Brew, because he knows he loses a little bit of ground on the run portion, but he can maintain it on the bike. He's had some great races already this year in Portugal and in Ireland. But Kevin Richards has only been beaten out of the swim once. That was last year's World Championships. Some of the others up front in the top five, we also have Spencer Smith and Simon Lessing, very, very close together, and Yves Cordier, the man they call the Prince in Nice. Remember, he's placed second to Mark Allen at the Nice Triathlon before, so the French looking for big things from him. But that is closest to us, Simon Lessing, only a couple of metres separating the top five.
The Rivington Reservoir, normally used for fishing and sailing, no swimming allowed. Obviously, they've made a major exception today.
Some of these athletes, in fact, just raced last weekend, Steve. Simon Lessing and Spencer Smith went 1-2 at the Strand Triathlon in Finland, but that was half the distance over what they're competing today. And others in there, Yves Cordier was third last weekend at Embrun. That was another World Cup event. We have to remember this year's World Championships, also a part of the World Cup Series.
Steve, this is almost like lane swimming in the pool. It's so straight out.
It is indeed, and it's Spencer Smith who's on the inside there, getting a good advantage. He'll be first, I think. That's Robin Brew first around the buoy. Remember, now they make the left-hand turn. They have 100 metres to the final turn, and then 600 metres to the home, and then they have about a 150-metre run-up to the transition area.
At the Canadian Championships in Calgary and Mackenzie Lake, we saw a little confusion in the water because the course really wasn't marked that well. This one is marked exceptionally well. Should be no reason for mistakes here.
No, there certainly shouldn't, Stephen. We have to remember, though, these athletes were only allowed to train in the reservoir once. That was on Thursday between 8 a.m. and noon. However, it's such a simple course, straight out, one left turn and then back. I don't think anyone's going to go wrong. And look at the numbers of kayakers out there. They have lane markers even in between the buoys too. So you can't miss this. There's no real chop there to worry about in terms of losing your sighting. And they're close enough together. We are going to see a very close swim here. Probably about 30-40 men within the first 30 seconds of the leader coming through.
The only thing of major concern to the athletes is the temperature of the water. It's chilly. Our coverage of the World The streets of Horwich, not too far from the swim side at the World Triathlon Championships. It's late summer in England, and the game is cricket. And the English answer to baseball. They call it rounders. Back at Rivington, the women with former world champion Karen Smyers of the U.S. are seconds away from the start of the swim.
I think the swim may affect us in that it's going to be cold. I think it'll be a question a little bit of who can warm up first on the bike, because it's a very hard start to the bike, and if you go into it cold, you could it's hard to go real hard on cold muscles. So I think maybe the people that can handle the cold the best may do the best in this race.
Spirits still pretty high among the elite women, obviously not thinking of the cold water or its after effects. The initial title in the 93 Worlds goes to Switzerland's Olivier Hufschmid. He crosses in 1:56.26 to give that nation its first ever junior men's crown. On the water's edge at Rivington, the final anxious seconds for the elite women.
Tension has certainly been building for these athletes. 94 women going off in the elite wave. Remember, they're going off 2 hours and 45 minutes behind the junior men who sent them off this morning. So it's a little bit tough for them to wait around. The tension high, but a good clean start there. And there's plenty of room for them to start. There's no need for anyone to get knocked about today in this reservoir.
They've turned the Rivington Reservoir into a sea of white. It hasn't seen this much activity. I don't think it ever has seen this kind of activity. It's the drinking water for a couple of towns very close to Rivington. And as I said before, no swimming normally allowed, but they have made an exception for the World Triathlon Championships.
And as the women go into the first 100 metres, we are watching the men already exiting the reservoir, and it looks like we're going to see a time under 18 minutes. But remember, the overall time for the swim does include getting to the transition area, and it's Robin Brew of Great Britain, the man who led their team at the Olympic Games in 1984, leading them through. So very prestigious start for Great Britain. Behind him, Kevin Richards from South Africa, and in third place, last year's World Junior Champion, also from Great Britain, Spencer Smith. Yves Cordier of France in fourth, and Simon Lessing, the reigning World Champion, in fifth. On the left, as we look at the screen, we have Robin Brew and Kevin Richards now just behind him. So who's going to be the first one out onto the bike? You can see number one, that is Simon Lessing. Ahead of him there, 62, that was Spencer Smith, and Yves Cordier just in between them. One of the German triathletes coming through. Look at that, Rainer Müller, last year's silver medalist, number 55. He's also going through. We said the Europeans will be strong, and it looks like a European who's going to be first down to that 40k bike course. Look at that, 3 Australians, 4 Australians, very close together. Greg Welch amongst them, and Brad Bevan also in there, and Ben Bright, one of the youngest in the elite men's division.
We should point out, Steve, that you must walk or run the bike out of the transition area. Look, Simon Lessing is getting on too early. You can't do that. You have to walk it up to that marshal, then get on the bike. So it's going to be Spencer Smith first out of the transition area and first onto the bike.
So Simon lost a few seconds there. The marshal had to whistle at him. Obviously, he didn't want to get any infraction at this early stage. And look at that. Spencer's away. Hasn't put his feet into his cleats yet. Just wants to get some distance on the bike. Get moving as fast as he can just to get some little action going. His legs pumping. He's now putting, obviously, his feet into his cleats as he knows what's ahead here. Remember, this man has come up here to train. He, in fact, did not stay with the Brits for very long. He only arrived on Friday night. So he's been separating himself from the team.
Steve, it looks as if there's going to be some sort of pack behind Spencer. What about drafting?
Well, this is what we looked at last year in Muskoka. We thought we had a very tough course. We thought that would break them up. You couldn't get a tougher course, really, than Muskoka for the bike, but they're so good, these athletes. There are so many of them now at that elite level, but wait till it comes down to that last 15k on the bike. I think we'll see some major separations taking place there. This is a pretty dodgy course. The first 10k, it is very narrow, it is windy, there's some severe downhills, as well as some tough grades.
And with those tight turns, you have to be very conscious of the speed. We can see the braking action there.
Indeed, that was Robin Brew, and that was behind him, I think, Ben Bright of Australia.
Results of the swim show Brew and Richards coming out with identical times of 18 minutes. The first Canadian out of the water, 45 seconds off a pace, Mark Bates. Mike Flagle was 41st, Andrew McMartin, 43rd. A quick look at the 40k bike course. Lots of twists and turns and hills at the start, then a straight ride through to Bolton, and then winding up in Manchester.
And Spencer Smith being chased. Obviously, they're not going to let him try and get away in the early stages. He's only, in fact, beaten Simon Lessing once, but this would be something extraordinary if he could maintain the lead. But it's very, very early on, but he does know this course well, and some of these athletes have had so much difficulty in getting onto the course that some of them, I think, are going to be intimidated by the type of course. Look how narrow those roads are, so making a pass, you could be taking your life into your hands.
Throw in one other problem. We had some overnight rain, so the streets are a little slippery.
They are, and I'm a little surprised to see Ben Bright doing so well. We saw him a couple of years ago in Nice, try to make a break on the bike, but he suffered badly on the long run. But remember, the run here, just 10 kilometres. We get a good look there, and you can see how tough this is. Now, there's a severe left-hand turn they have to make at the end of the bridge. Look, that was Spencer who tried to break a little early. Could have been dangerous if there was another man alongside them. Some of the Germans there, it was interesting to know what the Germans had on the back of their tracksuits. It said triathletes are against violence and racism. Nice to see a sound, healthy statement being put out by those triathletes as we now look at Hamish Carter of New Zealand, who has assumed the lead on the bike. A bit of a surprise for us, but no surprise from the New Zealand team captain who told us to watch out for Hamish, but I'll be surprised if he can really hang in right at the front there. We are now looking at Simon Lessing. Remember how he came through in Muskoka on the run. Really stormed it. He is one of the fastest runners in the field.
And there is Hamish Carter on the inside. That is Ben Bright of Australia on the outside.
And Spencer Smith coming between them on the turn. He's not going to let them get away. We had a phenomenal bike from him last year in Muskoka.
Australia's Brad Bevan talked to us before the race began, and he talked about strategy.
I'm traditionally a swimmer, so you know, I'm cardiovascular fit. So that's probably the time where I'm feeling the best during the race, after the swim, and the other guys are sort of hurting a little bit. So, you know, I'm hoping to put in a hard 5 to 10k of that first bit of the bike ride. Hopefully I'll be up near the front somewhere, which you know, is a positive thing as well, because if you get stuck in a group of 20 or whatever through the narrow section, then you know that could work against you, I think.
No worries for the Australian Brad Bevan at this stage. He's riding alone in 6th position, and well positioned, I might add.
He really is, and it's not surprising that he's a good swimmer. In fact, he's known as Croc because he has to swim in crocodile-infested waters up in his hometown of Mirrawinny.
There's 22-year-old Simon Lessing, a superb runner. If he has any kind of a lead coming off the bike, the rest of the field could be in trouble.
They could, and we have to remember Simon was born, in fact, in South Africa, in Durban, but he resides now in Salon de Provence in France, as well as many of the New Zealanders and Australians. They spend their time there training and racing throughout Europe. And Spencer Smith, we have to recognise, was last year's senior men's champion, as well as junior champion, as well as European duathlon champion. So that man is remarkable at all 3 sports, originally a swimmer.
Really does not have a weakness to speak of.
He doesn't, and we saw how he could run last year at the World Junior Championships when he won the World Junior Championships by over 2 minutes from the second-place man, Cameron Brown of New Zealand.
Steve, let's leave the men's race for a moment and focus on the finish of the junior women. Sarah Harrow of New Zealand has a lead on Natalia Orchard of Australia. Harrow gives the Kiwis a gold medal and a world title with a clocking of 2 hours, 13 minutes, and 23 seconds. Orchard takes second, although it doesn't look like it, almost a full minute behind Harrow. Third place belongs to a member of that small team from Denmark, Marie Overby, with a time of 2:15:24. And there's Canada's Kirstie Otto. Remember, before the race, she said top 5 would be fine. Taking 4th, another member of that strong Kiwi contingent, Heidi Alexander. At last year's Worlds in Muskoka, Kirstie Otto finished in the medals with a bronze. This time around, the 18-year-old from St. Catharines will have to settle for 5th place. Her time more than 4 minutes behind the winner, 2:17:53. The elite women are out of the water and into the transition, led by defending world champion Michellie Jones.
And look at this, what a surprise, because right behind her is her countrywoman Rena Bradshaw. She was 3rd in the Gold Coast to Jones and Bianca Van Wosek, and it is Joanne Ritchie we see in the background there in 3rd place out of the swim. So seconds between them. Again, we wait to see how quickly they can make the transition and get out onto the bike course. A great swim from Michellie. We saw her do that at our national championships in Calgary. She led the field through the swim and out onto the bike course. And look at the difference between Michellie's time in transition there and Rena Bradshaw, losing valuable seconds.
As soon as they get.
And there's Carol Montgomery. She's had a great swim too. Remember, we saw Carol in 1990 when she got the silver medal in Florida at the World Championships. She is having a brilliant year, and certainly she boosts our Canadian women's chances of getting that gold medal for the team title. She's had a wonderful season. She won the Los Cabos World Cup Series Triathlon. She won in San Diego. And she certainly is a great hope for Canada once again for a gold medal.
And just like she did at the Canadians, as you mentioned, in Calgary, Jones wins the swim. Joanne Ritchie, another solid swim, only 2 seconds off the pace at 19:45. Carol Montgomery, 8th out of the water. Terry Smith, 16th. Fiona Cribb, 24th. Heather Fuhr, 48th. Jones, the leader on the bike. A tough climb right from the start.
We were able to see her train over the course just a couple of days ago with her fiancé, Peter Corson. He tells her exactly what to do. He knows her very, very well, obviously. They're, in fact, getting married in December. So she's been over the course a number of times. She's done her homework as they make an upgrade here. You can see her out of the saddle, pushing hard. That's the benefit of getting here early, looking over the course, knowing exactly what you've got to do, when you've got to make the break, knowing what gears to be in. You can see Joanne appears to be struggling just a little there. She's not standing up, but she's a very powerful woman, as you know. As we look at the right of the screen, there's Canada's Carol Montgomery in 2nd place.
More from Manchester in just a moment. Steve Armitage along with Steve King. Welcome to the county of Lancashire, site for the 93 World Triathlon Championships, where right now the men's elite field are chasing the defending world junior champion, Spencer Smith.
And Spencer Smith, as I said, has only beaten Simon Lessing once before, and they in fact went head-to-head at the first race for Simon of this year. That was May the 16th in Rennes, France, when Spencer came away 55 seconds behind Simon Lessing, and last weekend, as I mentioned, in Finland, about the same distance between them. So a battle going on for the Brits as we look at Hamish Carter. What a ride he is having, and this man can run as well.
But the leader right now is Spencer Smith, hoping to add the elite title to his junior crown. Nobody has ever done that before.
No, and Spencer won the British Championships for senior men in Swindon, Wiltshire on May the 23rd, and he won that by over a minute and a half. A couple of the Frenchmen looking around there. I think that's Philippe Fattori and Remy Ramteau. Both had good swims, but Philippe there was way back in terms of position, but there was only about 50 seconds separating the top 50.
This gives you a good look at the Lancashire countryside as they head out into the moors. The moors not too far from this area.
And to give you an idea of the sort of form that Spencer Smith and Simon Lessing are in when they beat out the rest of the field in Finland just last weekend, in third place was Mike Pigg, and in fourth place was Brad Bevan. We have to remember he comes from good genetic stock too. His father, Bill, is an ex-football player for the Queen's Park Rangers, and his family will be around the transition and finish areas in the hope that he can maintain the top 3 position and medal for Great Britain once again. On a downhill section now, again they have to be very careful on the curves. It's been difficult for some of the motorcyclists there from the media to stay with the bikers. And let's hope there's no problems with the drafting there, as the biker with the cameraman has to move ahead as we look at our lead woman, Michellie Jones.
We've seen this sight before at previous World Championships and, of course, at the Canadian Championships in Calgary. And that is Lydia Rousse of France, a 31-year-old who was third at the 93 European Championships in Luxembourg, making a move on Michellie Jones and going out in front.
Well, she came out of the water in 5th place, Steve, but it was only 7 seconds back on Michellie. And that lady was in the French national swimming team at one point and has just retired recently from the French Air Force.
And she's doing a little bit of flying right now, Steve.
She is indeed, and there's a couple of other women we had to look for last year. Remember, Donna Peters had the fastest bike. She's presently 38th after swim as we look into the field at the lead. Look in the second pack there, Carol Montgomery on the left, and just behind her, Joanne Ritchie. So a great position so far for the Canadians. We understand Terry Smith has had a pretty good swim out there. She was 16th out of the water at 20:22.
Carol Montgomery, an excellent cyclist. She can certainly put a little pressure on Rousse and Michellie Jones.
She can, and we expect big things of Carol. Remember, we haven't seen a race in Canada for 2 years, but she's been sweeping the boards in the US. She's been training down in California. She got married as well. She is in super shape, and she would love to come away with the gold for Canada and, of course, for herself.
And a very fierce competitor.
She is. She doesn't mind putting it all on the line, and she has to do that today because she knows the running speed of people like Michellie Jones. Remember, she's an ex... oh, my goodness, Steve, that is Carol Montgomery who's gone down on the turn. Just as she made a left turn, she went straight ahead.
Carol Montgomery is down, and it looks like she will be out of the race. An unfortunate accident for Carol Montgomery.
There's your face, all right.
Yeah, it's well cut up or just scratch.
No.
You got any pain anywhere?
No. Well, a little bit in my knee, but...
It looks more like mud than blood on the face of Carol Montgomery, but her racing day is over.
Oh, what a disappointment for Carol and for the Canadian women's team.
Yeah, a little bit.
Is it?
Yeah, it's just bruised, I think, everywhere.
Now, I don't know whether Joanne was aware of what happened there. I'm sure she would have noticed something going on. I don't know if she looked behind to check to see if it was Carol, but I'm sure she would be disappointed too because she is the women's team captain.
Michellie Jones in second position, the defending world champion, and in front of Michellie Jones is Karen Smyers of the United States. Smyers has taken the lead.
Not surprising, Karen's in great form. She was the winner of the Worlds in 1990. She's had a super year already. We saw her in St. Croix where she won a brilliant race there, well ahead of the women's field.
Smyers won the world title in 1990 in Orlando, and she has some thoughts on drafting while on this 40K course.
I'm definitely always against drafting. I think that it's hard to say. You know, when it's a technical course like that, you often can't draft that much anyway, that the people that are good on the turns, and the thing with cornering and things, I guess you can't really, you're not really gaining that much advantage anyway right through there. And there are some hills that I think it might allow the stronger cyclists to get away, which is what I'm hoping to do.
And she's making good use of those hills right now. Karen Smyers of the United States with a very slight lead on Michellie Jones, the Australian. Then it's Joanne Ritchie in third, followed by Annette Pedersen of Denmark.
And I think a lot of people are surprised at the strength of the Danish team. They got the bronze medals last year, and once again they're very well placed as we look at Annette Pedersen, who is presently in 4th place, and she was 11th in the world just last year and 5th in this year's European Championships.
Stay with us. Our coverage of the World Triathlon Championships from Manchester will continue in a moment. Welcome back to Manchester and the World Triathlon Championships. Not exactly what you'd call a relaxing week for the Canadian team. It all began with the trip to the course, and that meant carrying the bikes from the hotel room to a truck. The bikes, in some cases worth a few $1,000s, were easy targets for theft, but presented a logistical nightmare for the athlete. The loading and unloading on the special van that carried the bikes from downtown Manchester to the course itself was a workout in itself. You couldn't ride to the course on the bike, a possibility in Muskoka and Surfers Paradise, but were required to take the double-decker bus, while the bikes took the van. This complicated and time-consuming process took place each time the athlete wanted to work out on or near the actual course. England is very proud of its motorway system, and well, it should be. But the ride from the hotel to the course, some 25 miles, wasn't freeway driving. A great chance to grab a few winks or write that promised postcard. But these are athletes who were primed and ready to go. The last thing they needed was a lengthy ride to and from the course. The highway system they did see would be a constant reminder of the bike course itself. Very narrow. Once at the course or the drop-off site, the saga continued for the Canadian athletes. The buses weren't permitted near the transition area. This meant a hike from the double-decker bus to the area where you hoped you'd find your bike. The bikes then had to be offloaded from the van. Remember, these aren't your average 10-speed. Too many bumps, and it could spell big trouble. Then it was a case of finding the right bike. We're talking a couple of hundred lookalikes here. From the van, the bike then had to be walked into the transition area. And with 1,000 competitors in the event, the next problem was finding your own spot. I know it's here somewhere. I'm just not sure where. Ah, yes. Of course, the English weather being as unpredictable as usual, that extra precaution at keeping things dry certainly wouldn't hurt. And you thought the tough part of triathlon was the race itself. In Manchester, it was getting there. Out on the course, Canada's Joanne Ritchie, who was third out of the water, is currently sitting in 4th place in the bike ride. What about her concerns for the 40K second phase of the championship?
The only thing that worries me is the packs that might develop in there, which will hurt me if a large pack develops with the runners in it, who will then, even if it's a legal pack, they're still going to be saving leg strength for the run.
And that's what Ritchie might be doing at this point in the bike ride, riding alone in 4th position.
And once again, we've heard from the bike course, Steve, that Donna Peters is flying through the field. She came out of the swim in 38th place, and she is making up a lot of ground. Michellie Jones, presently in 2nd place. She can look ahead, and who does she see? It's Karen Smyers leading the way. Now, Karen has been disappointed the last couple of years in the World Championships. In Muskoka, she was 6th overall, led the US team to the gold medal for the team event, but the year before that, she was 9th in Australia. Very disappointed with that. She'd love to come away with her 2nd gold medal. Remember how great she was in Florida. And Hamish Carter, he also competed last year in Muskoka. That was great experience for him. I think he may be surprised that he's presently in 2nd place, so he'll be doing whatever he can to hold on to that.
And you get a good look here at the distance between Hamish Carter and the leader, Spencer Smith, who is now just outside of Bolton, a textile and engineering center.
20-year-old from Hounslow is quite a hero in England, as he should be. He's won a lot of their time trials, and it's unusual for cyclists in the sport of triathlon to come out and win a cycling time trial that's not to do with triathlon. Even Mike Pick hasn't been able to do that. As we look at Yves Cordier, remember, he came out of the swim in 3rd place. He is now in about 5th place, catching up to Ben Bright and Brad Bevan. So the Oz is well placed again to pack for the team. Miles Stewart appears to be in about 8th place at this time. Remember, though, Miles has that sprint finish in him that we saw in Australia in 91. Brad Bevan doing very nicely, the 24-year-old who tied for the World Cup Series win with Canada's Andrew McMartin last year.
And Bevan is on that 2001 Zip bike. We saw that at the Canadian Championships in Calgary.
And there's another one of the Frenchmen. I think that was Yves Cordier, who's just gone through once again, known as the Prince because of what he's done there in Nice. But he's not the greatest of runners. He always seems to have lost out in the run. Ben Bright, one of the youngsters, remember 2 years ago, he won the bronze medal in the World Junior Championships.
And now back with the women, it looks as if Karen Smyers is about to be passed by Annette Pedersen of Denmark. She was 10th at the World Championships in Muskoka last year, 5th at this year's Europeans.
She was also a winner in Lanzarote, so she has what it takes to stay right up there. But I think she's really going to lose a little ground maybe on the run. But remember, these Europeans, they're used to the cold weather too. Denmark, not the greatest place for triathlons, and it was her countrywoman, Suzanne Nielsen, who won their national championships.
So it's Pedersen in the lead, followed by the former world champion, Karen Smyers of the United States.
There was an interesting race recently in Orange County, the World Cup Series race. Michellie Jones won that over Karen Smyers, and in 3rd place was Canada's Joanne Ritchie.
And just prior to the Canadian Championships in Calgary, Michellie Jones right there had an accident. She was knocked unconscious when she fell off her bike.
We did, and we heard just this morning that in fact Canada's Andrew McMartin had an accident yesterday, and he wasn't telling anyone about it, so he's pretty battered up. So we hope he's got the leg speed to maintain it on the bike. Now look at the gap that Spencer Smith is opening up here. This is quite amazing when you consider the powerhouses that are right behind him, but the gap may be 200 to 300 metres. I couldn't see the 2nd or 3rd place person.
20-year-old from Hounslow, Middlesex, the world junior champion in 1992. Spencer Smith, the leader. And now we switch back to the women's race, and this is Annette Pedersen of Denmark coming into this tight turn. You can see her braking there. She is followed by Karen Smyers. Then it's the Australian Michellie Jones, and then Canada's Joanne Ritchie in 4th position, and then Sabine Westhoff of Germany. Stay with us. More from Manchester after this. Traffic and more traffic. It could be downtown anywhere, but this is Manchester, England, soon to be site of the 10K run for the World Triathlon Championships. With more on that, trying to avoid the double-deckers, here's my partner, Steve King.
Steve, one of the great difficulties over the past week prior to today's race has been that most of the triathletes have not had a chance to train fully throughout the cycle course. However, today, the athletes have had a chance because the motorways were fully closed off to traffic. You can see some of the age groupers coming into the transition area. They're heading out onto the 2x5K run loop. That's a course that most of the triathletes have not had a chance to train over due to congestion of pedestrians and traffic here in muggy Manchester.
No traffic or weather-related problems right now for the men's elite leader, Spencer Smith. We estimate his lead at about 30 seconds plus on that man, the Kiwi, Hamish Carter. And currently leading a group chasing Smith and Carter, Brad Bevan, and the defending world champion, Simon Lessing, who talks about the problems of packs forming.
I think if the packs do start happening, it will happen after the first 15K when we hit the flat roads into Manchester.
Well, they are well into Manchester now. Spencer Smith getting set for the transition area to go from the bike to the run.
And I just can't believe the lead that he has opened up. We wondered where everyone else was. We know that Greg Welch has crashed out there on the bike. I'm pleased to hear that he's back on his bike, but he's lost a lot of ground. Now look at this, a little bit different here in Manchester. You have to rack your bike outside the transition area and then run in where they have some buckets for your gear, your helmets, and where your shoes are placed. So let's see how quickly. that Spencer Smith can make it through. They roar off the crowd there. This guy must be really up to get a lead over Simon Lessing. He's thrown his helmet away there. That may cause a problem. You are meant to put it into the one buckets. Hamish Carter in second place. This is just brilliant. I wonder if he can hold it. He hits. Oh, no, look at that. We said it was muggy. It's also very slippery. The rain has been drizzling down as we now look at Hamish Carter coming in, and he seems well clear in second place. This Kiwi certainly is surprising a lot of people. Now, a pack of three, that's Brad Bevan coming in third place, Simon Lessing in fourth place, and Ben Bright in fifth place. This is just wonderful. We are in for a race here. The first two are quite well clear. I can't see anyone getting Spencer Smith. He is one of the fastest runners in the sport. Maybe there's a chance they can catch Hamish Carter. I don't know, but we've seen him before do well in the States, but he only placed 8th in Orange County there. As we look at Brad Bevan, remember Brad came away with a silver medal in 1990 in Florida. He wants to win badly, but I think he knows how fast Spencer Smith is up ahead of them.
I'm impressed with this transition area. I like the idea of racking the bike outside, then running through, picking up your shoes, and going out onto the run. It's very, very smooth. In past World Triathlons, a lot of congestion.
As we look at Miles Stewart, there was a great British pack there. They're packing well for the team event. Miles Stewart, a very fast transition. I think we're about to see some of the Canadians come in. I think we've got Andrew McMartin there and Mark Bates very close together. Good to see them doing so well, but they've got to run hard to get through this pack. We've got about 25 people in a group that are coming in within seconds. Let's see how much that accident that he had yesterday will affect him on the run. Andrew, of course, last year's national champion in the Kelowna Apple Triathlon. There's Mark Bates right beside him. 1 and 2, they've done that many times, including a couple of World Cup races last year. Mark Bates, one of the best runners around. He goes out, he's looking good. He can make up a lot of spots in the first 5K, and what a great cycle ride from Mark Becker from Calgary. He should be very pleased with that one.
The bike time for Spencer Smith, 1:02.26, add on 18 minutes for the swim, and the combined time for the leader is 1:23.0. Carter almost a minute behind. Andrew McMartin, who was 43rd in the swim, has posted a 1:04.51 bike ride and is now the top Canadian in 29th place. And this is the course he'll be running, a 2-lap circuit in Manchester, mostly flat with 3 short climbs and a total of 40 turns. And right now, the leader, the man to beat, everybody is after this guy, Spencer Smith. As we go back to the women's race, and that is Karen Smyers in front, Michellie Jones to the left, and now Joanne Ritchie making a move.
With Spencer Smith clear on the run already, we are seeing a great battle in the women's race. I think it's going to come down to the run for the women, but although Spencer is well clear, this is exciting. This is what the crowd is hoping for. We have to remember the women went off 15 minutes back of the men in their swim wave. So Michellie Jones presently in third place. Karen Smyers doing very, very nicely in second place, but the rest of the US team not doing as well as hoped. Melissa Mantak, last year's bronze medalist, well off the pace.
But the leader right now is Joanne Ritchie from Kelowna, the mother of 2.
I tell you who's going to be happy about that is Mark Mulholland from Vernon, the man who built the bike frame for her there. He'll be delighted to see that. She's riding very well. She is a very strong athlete. Remember, she's also the world ergometer rowing champion.
The men's leader right now is the 20-year-old from Great Britain, Spencer Smith. A very strong runner. He does everything well in the triathlon. That is Brad Bevan, and you see the distance that he has to go to catch Simon Lessing, who's currently sitting in third position.
Right, they're vying for that bronze medal. Simon Lessing, a man who began his triathlon career in Durban, South Africa in 1986. Recognized his own talent. He was a national class swimmer and also cross-country runner. Here's one man they all fear. They're catching some of the age groupers there. Hamish Carter, the 22-year-old from Auckland, holding on for the silver medal position as they go into the first 5K loop.
Back on the bike course, Joanne Ritchie has dropped to third, leaving Smyers and Michellie Jones in a battle for the lead.
It's the type of course where you have to ride strong, though, but it's because it's a flat run. I mean, all you do is have to have great leg speed off the bike and you can make up a lot of time. The Europeans, they're going to be strong on the bike. They're always strong on the bike. So, you know, it's just going to matter. It's going to come down, you know, who's the strongest on the day.
And the strong one right now is Karen Smyers of the U.S., but with a lot of ground still to cover. Steve, this race is far from over.
It is, and we've got a very fast run course out there, 2x5K, very flat. There's only a couple of grades. Look at that. Annette Pedersen going through back into second place. What a great ride from the Dane.
And look at how smooth she is. Look at her upper body in comparison to her legs. Her legs really doing all the work. This is what you look for in a strong cyclist. Look how Karen Smyers struggling a bit.
I think the Danes know that they may not medal individually, but they want to get a team medal once again. And something else that's happening out there, the Germans are coming on very strongly. They've now got 3 people in the top 15 on the bike.
Annette Pedersen of Denmark taking over the lead from Karen Smyers of the U.S.
How exciting this must be for Denmark, Steve. The first time a Danish athlete has ever led the World Championships, male or female, as we look at Joanne Ritchie sensibly taking on liquids because she knows that 10K run is ahead.
Joanne Ritchie in 4th place. Then it's Michellie Jones, Karen Smyers, and Annette Pedersen.
What a great day it's turning out for Annette so far. 5th in the Europeans, and right now she's leading the world.
But I don't know that she has the experience to hang in there and be there at the finish. We'll be back with more from Manchester in a moment. Welcome back to Manchester and our coverage of the World Triathlon Championships. We're looking at Annette Pedersen of Denmark, a bit of a surprise leader at this stage in the bike.
She is, but it's not too far before we see there's a group of 4 right behind her. Unfortunately, Canada's Carol Montgomery is not amongst them. We understand she is okay, so that's pleasing for us, but disappointing, obviously, as far as the team results are going. But for the individual title, it still looks like Canada's medal hopes rest on Joanne Ritchie, the team captain, one of the most consistent performers, as the first off the bike is the Danish woman. Congratulations to her. A very good bike split for her, but she is not the fastest runner by a long stretch. So she'll be hoping, obviously, for a top 5 position. Look at that, 2nd and 3rd places, Michellie Jones, Karen Smyers, and I think that's Donna Peters who's come through off the bike. She has had a brilliant bike split. I think that's a 1:10 split for Donna Peters coming through.
It'll be interesting to see how long it takes Pedersen to get into her running shoes and out onto the course. There is Kelowna's Joanne Ritchie.
And Donna Peters going out onto the run alongside our 3-time national champion. Donna's time about 2 minutes faster than the likes of Karen Smyers just heading out there. And here comes Sonja Krolik, the 3-time world junior champion, leading the German contingent. I think that was Isabelle Mouton of France. And there's Terry Smith from Canada. She's had a fair bike split. She won't be too happy with that, though. I think it was a 1:14, about 2 minutes off the pace. Fiona Cribb now coming through. You can see she is limping. She was, in fact, 7th in the worlds last year, but at the Nationals she had problems with her quads and hamstrings. That was Caroline Hubbard also coming in. There's Heather Fuhrer of Canada, one of the fastest runners in the sport of triathlon. She did a 1:15 there on the bike. Caroline Hubbard also a 1:15.
Michellie Jones, the overall leader, with a combined swim bike time of 1:32.03. Terry Smith, 1:14.22 on the bike. 21st overall to the run. Fiona Cribb, 28th. Caroline Hubbard, 35th. And Heather Fuhrer, 38th.
So Michellie Jones in 1st place on the run. The first of the 2 5K loops, Karen Smyers. Remember, we saw Karen come through the field in 1990 in Florida. Will she do that again as we look at 3rd placer, last year's silver medalist in Muskoka, Joanne Ritchie of Canada. Can she hang on and medal once again?
And Annette Pedersen, as we mentioned, might have a few problems on the run, and she has already. She's in 4th position. As we mentioned, the run is twice around a circuit in downtown Manchester. Joanne Ritchie talks about the loops.
I think I want the 2 5K loops because there'll be more spectators at, and spectators always give you a charge.
Well, not too much in the way of spectator support right here for Ritchie, and not a great deal for the leader, Michellie Jones, who offers this thought on the flat course.
You know, it would have been nice to have a hill, but I mean, it's an advantage for me being a runner as well, having a hill, but being a flat, it's an advantage to me as well, because, I mean, I know I have leg speed, so that gives me a little bit more confidence.
And confidence is one thing that Jones has, and a lead on Karen Smyers of the United States.
We saw the way she was able to dominate the race in Calgary once she got off the bike, and look what's happening now. 2nd place is now being assumed by Simon Lessing, the man who stormed through the field last year in the World Championships in Muskoka. He has taken Hamish Carter, now 2nd and 3rd, but it's Spencer Smith looking around. He has nothing to worry about, is way ahead.
We've heard from the women on the flat course. Here's Simon Lessing. Advantage or disadvantage?
The thing is, it takes quite a while to get away. Because I think now in triathlon, in the sport of triathlon, there are a lot of people who can run up to 8K very, very fast, who can run 31-minute pace. And I think the the factor would be the last 2K. That's when definitely somebody's going to be able to make the break or not.
And it looks as if Lessing will have to make the break fairly soon or lose Spencer Smith.
And Spencer's already travelled around the world this year. He won in Singapore, he won the St. Antonia's Triathlon in Florida. And Simon Lessing began his campaign for the 93 Worlds in May of this year. He won that event, but can he come back and get Spencer Smith as we now look at a battle for the women's lead? Karen Smyers has now come up to the shoulders of Michellie Jones.
Michellie Jones has a cross-country background. She's a very strong runner, as is Karen Smyers.
They met earlier this year in the Gold Coast of Australia, where it was a bit of a surprise. Michellie came away with the win, no surprise there, but Karen Smyers was beaten back into 4th place as she now assumes the lead, her 2nd time of leading a World Championships, but the first time this man has competed at the senior level at a World Championships.
And now Spencer Smith has the finish line in sight. Union Jack in hand and a world title only seconds away. Look at the reception that Spencer Smith is getting from the large crowd at the finish area in Manchester. His family and coach are at the finish line. What a moment this will be for the 20-year-old world junior champion last year, elite champion only 12 months later, a first in the young sport of triathlon. Total domination for Spencer Smith in front of the British fans. Hollywood would have been hard-pressed to script a better finish. The world champion, and deservedly so for 1993, Spencer Smith. His time, 1:51.20, and the time for the run, 30.50. That would have won many a road race. And the runner-up for 93, a 1-2 finish for Great Britain, Simon Lessing. Lessing has only lost to Smith now twice in his career, but on this day, it was no contest. Lessing, not the force he was a year ago in Muskoka, fails in his attempt to become the first to win back-to-back world titles, but he still manages a smile, winding up 2nd. 3rd place will go to the man from down under, the Kiwi, Hamish Carter. What a day for Carter, following in the footsteps of the great Richard Wells. A strong swim, a solid bike, and what looks like a 32-minute run. Put that all together, and presto, a bronze medal for New Zealand at the World Championships. And next year, the Worlds will be hosted by New Zealand. A hop and a skip for Hamish Carter as he comes across the line. And coming in to claim 4th place, the Aussie Brad Bevan. He was 2nd in 1990. He failed to finish in Muskoka when his chain snapped on the bike. But that's all behind the one they call the Croc. 4th place in Manchester for Brad Bevan, 1:53.55. The Aussies were 1-2-3 in 90 in Orlando. This time around, 4-5 with Ben Bright coming in to take 5th place, 1:54.20 for Bright, a full 3 minutes behind Smith. And speaking of the winner, he's standing by with Steve King.
Spencer Smith, you've been British champion, you've been European champion, last year's World Junior, today Senior World Champion. How does it feel?
It's just a dream come true, really. I mean, you know, you can say that, but I mean, when you're at your home country and you come from a junior to be a senior, it's just with your family and your friends and everyone here, it's just the best feeling of my life.
Were you aware when you were on the bike just the sort of lead you and Carter Hamish had established?
I wasn't sure, you know. I looked round once or twice and I saw just Hamish behind me, and I thought, well, I'm not sure how far the others are behind, but I'm just going to keep on trying hard and keep concentrating and focusing and just keep going.
It must have been great for you running around the streets of Manchester here with the sort of support you were getting from the home crowd.
Oh, of course, you know, when all your friends are here and your family, and it's just the best feeling of your life. I'm not sure that it will ever be bettered.
Another Aussie is about to finish. Miles Stewart, who won the title 2 years ago on the Gold Coast with that great sprint, winds up in 8th place. And here's the first Canadian at the line, Mark Bates. Bates was 7th at the Worlds in Muskoka. He'll settle for 12th in Manchester. Mr. Consistency, Mark Bates. The 2nd Canadian to finish, Andrew McMartin. No doubt a long and frustrating day for the Montreal native. You have to wonder about the effects of that 90-day suspension. But at 21, you know that better days are surely in the cards for Andrew McMartin, who winds up 15th in Manchester with a time of 1:55.48. About to finish the 1990 World Champion, Sydney's Greg Welch. He led the Aussie charge 3 years ago. He'll have to settle for 23rd this time, but he probably has other things to think about. He's getting married in a couple of weeks. Now, let's go back to Steve King.
So Simon Lessing, gold medalist from last year, silver medalist today. Run us through your race, if you would, please, Simon.
Yeah, I'm really happy with my race. What can I say? Spencer was really strong today. I had a good swim. Surprisingly, I came out well in the swim. I thought I would be affected more by the cold. On the bike, Spencer was just too strong and he managed to pull away. And I knew at the end of the bike that he was a bit too far to catch up, unless he had, you know, made a major disaster. But, you know, for me, I'm really happy. I think with races like this, to be able to be consistent is really good, because, you know, it's quite often you can finish first one year and 20th the next. So consistency for me counts, and I'm really quite content with that.
The third Canadian to finish, a real veteran of the sport, another Montreal native, another Andrew McNaughton. Now, back to Steve.
So Greg Welch, obviously a little disappointed about the turn of events today. Give us a rundown of your race, if you would. Coming from the swim, you were delighted with that, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I had a brilliant swim, and then I was right with you know, Rick Wells, Brad Bevan, Simon Lessing, and then 4 kilometres into the bike ride, my race basically come to an end. I was in the lead group, and I just hit a real wet spot in the middle of the road. It was a puddle, and my back brake slid, and I went just off the into the bush and halfway up a tree, and I just took this, you know, the skin off my knuckles and stuff, and that was about it.
Back on the streets of Manchester, the battle for first between Karen Smyers and Michellie Jones continues. These two, both winners of the world title, have been dueling like this since entering the transition area from the swim. Both are considered strong runners, but if you were looking for an edge, go with Jones, the younger of the two, and maybe a better runner because of her background in cross-country running. Stay with us. It promises to be an exciting women's finish in Manchester. Steve Armitage along with Steve King. Welcome back to Manchester and the final moments of the women's race between Karen Smyers of the United States, who won this event 3 years ago and was 6th last year in Muskoka. What about the prospect of a sprint finish against Jones?
I have never really come down to a kick with Michellie. We've run in one Danskin race. We ran, I was about 3 seconds ahead of her for the whole run, and we started 3 seconds apart and finished 3 seconds apart. I think neither of us really had a kick because we were going all out the whole way. But if it comes down to a strategy where we're kind of saving something up for the last half mile, I think that wouldn't be a bad position for me to be in.
And from the front runners, Michellie Jones and Karen Smyers, we look back to Joanne Ritchie, and we can see her in third position and how much ground she has to make up if she wants to win a silver or perhaps even gold.
We do have to remember, too, whichever of these three women come away with the win, they'll be the first person ever to win 2 world championships. But the confidence has to be with Michellie. Every outing this year where she's gone head-to-head with Karen Smyers and Joanne Ritchie, she's come out on top. The one race that didn't happen was in New York in the Danskin race, where Michellie had the accident on the bike and Karen went on to win.
Remember, Michellie Jones is undefeated in races in 1993 that she has finished.
That includes in Australia too. She won in New Caledonia. She won in Coffs Harbour as well at Gold Coast, and that's where Karen came fourth. So it's really coming down to the wire. Both these ladies are capable of sub 36 minutes for 10K on this type of a course. And of course, we're hoping Joanne Ritchie can hang on at least for that bronze medal.
This is shaping up to be a tremendous finish. Remember that sprint finish we had on the Gold Coast between the men a couple of years ago? It looks as if we're going to repeat that with the women this time around.
I can only imagine what's going through their minds at this time. Have I got enough energy? Can I sprint? They know they're going to need that sprint. No one is going to back off now. And when they hear the roar of the crowd, the closer they get, the more up they're going to get. They're going to have to pump hard with their legs and their arms.
And the key is, when do I make the move?
Exactly, and of course we know Michellie is capable of this. We saw a great finish for her in Calgary. We saw a tremendous finish from Joanne Ritchie, who took her 3rd national championships there. She is hoping that heel will hold out for her today. Looks like it might, but she is being chased by that junior from Germany, Sonja Krolik, who's come from behind on the swim before in the junior championships to take a win overall, losing about 5 minutes on the swim. Today, I don't know if she can make it up on Joanne. Joanne is about 30 seconds back now of 1st and 2nd, Karen Smyers and Michellie Jones.
You keep waiting for that break as you look at Karen Smyers and now Michellie Jones of Australia, the defending world champion, wants to become the first triathlete to win back-to-back world titles. Can she do it? Will she do it today as they come down for what is going to be surely a sprint to the finish.
It looks like it. We saw the European men dominate the scene today, but the European women are not in the top three, but it looks like they're packing well in the team event. So Canada doesn't look like they've got a chance of getting a gold in the team, but it looks like we could certainly get a bronze in the individual to add to a gold and silver collection. So Kelowna will be proud once again of Joanne Ritchie. Now it's coming down to the wire, Steve.
And Michellie Jones has picked up the program just a little bit here. She is up the pace. Is she going to challenge Karen Smyers right now? Will she make the move? The finish line not too far off. You can hear the roar of the crowd. The crowd is very thick at the finish line area. The athletes have to know this. When will Michellie make that move? Will she make that move? Can Karen Smyers hang on? The challenge she knows surely must come from this tremendous athlete from Australia. It looks as if Michellie Jones is picking it up now. Will the move come now? The finish line is in sight. Michellie Jones stepping it up. She has pushed it into another gear. Michellie Jones of Australia has turned it on. She breaks for the finish line. It will be Michellie Jones, the first male or female to repeat as world champion. What a terrific race from Michellie Jones. 2:07.41. Karen Smyers, first in 1990, second in 93. And Joanne Ritchie, who won the gold medal in Australia, beat Smith to the sprint. Terry Smith, her fellow Canadian, silver in Muskoka, bronze in Manchester. And I know that William and Gillian, her young son and daughter and husband Blake, will once again be cheering Mom and the tremendous job that she has done in Manchester. 2:08.06 for Joanne Ritchie. Sonja Krolik of Germany will wind up in fourth place, the world junior champion from 1990 through to 92. Usually gives up about 5 minutes lead on the swim, and that was once again her problem here in Manchester. The time for Sonja Krolik, 2:09.21. Now Suzanne Nielsen of Denmark comes in to take fifth place. Her time, 2:09.26. Annette Pedersen, who had that tremendous bike ride, winds up in sixth place. Such a force on the bike, but couldn't keep it going on the run. That woman certainly could. Michellie Jones already on the phone back home to Australia, accepting the congratulations for the first ever triathlon double back-to-back victories. And now about to cross the line, the former Cochrane, Alberta resident Terry Smith. She was a brilliant second to Ritchie in Australia, a strong third at the Canadians in Calgary this year, but in Manchester, it just wasn't her day. Smith winds up in 18th position with a time of 2 hours, 12 minutes, and 10 seconds. The next Canadian to cross, Heather Fuhr, her time 2:13.01, good enough for 24th. Now, let's go to Steve King at the finish line with the 93 champion.
Michellie Jones just finished talking with your parents. They must be as ecstatic as you are, winning back-to-back world championships.
They were in tears, so, you know, it was exciting for me out there, you know. I didn't know how I'd go, and Karen Smyers was right up there, Joanne Ritchie. It was just like racing in the States again and in Canada. It was really tough, and it was damn cold out there.
Tremendous job. So tell us about that final 200 metres, if you will.
You know, I had a feeling Karen was getting tired because I knew she had to work hard to catch me to make up the 15 seconds that I got. And I just thought, I'm going to give it 100%. And when she didn't respond, I just kept going.
So here we are just minutes after that dramatic finish. Karen Smyers, Michellie Jones coming down to the wire. Tell us about those final few metres, if you would, Karen.
I'd rather not remember the final few meters, but, you know, through the run, I was real happy that I caught up to her in the first 3 miles. I felt real strong, and when I caught up to her, I debated about what my strategy should be, and I kind of thought maybe I'd push the pace a little bit the next mile and see if she hung with me, and she did. So I said, okay, it's just going to be a waiting game, so I kind of slowed down and was trying to conserve. And I really felt good for the run, and I felt ready for the sprint, but I just didn't have the same gear she had in the end. You know, it wasn't really a question of being tired. It was just a question of not having the same speed. So I wish I'd done a few track workouts with her so I knew what kind of speed she had. Maybe I would have played it a little differently.
A bronze for Joanne Ritchie, disappointment for Fiona Cribb and Carol Montgomery, who failed to finish. Some final thoughts and a comment from the top Canadian.